about telling you some new things. This is our 26th Zoom meeting. We've had Pat on and a number of other people. The 2026 looks like an exciting week for us at Penn Laws. And so I'll be talking about uh, something I've been interested in since 1986 when I worked down here on Lopez Island at Watmau Bight, a site that was my field school, and we found tons of these chitin plates. And this is a chitin plate I put on a bookmark, but they're pretty distinct, and so I was always curious why so much chitin and how they did fit into the Northwest Coast people's subsistence. And I've done two papers. In 2015, I did this one, and it's on the undervalued chitin. And then in retirement, I found some more information. So that's more what I'm talking about tonight, this paper here, which I'll send you on PDF tomorrow. But this one just came out, 2026. The first one I looked at, you get my laser. Uh, the first one I looked at was looking at the central coast here, like Ozette, and the north, and found quite a bit of information. And then I began looking at Oregon coast to see if they had similar concentrations of chitins in some of their sites. And a number of these sites averaged about 42% of the shellfish meat weight along the Oregon coast as well. Vic Casera made these chitin endowed maps for me. I don't think he's in here tonight. Um, but anyway, I want to say in the spring we'll have a pretty interesting talk. We've had the people from Manus Mastodon speak in an earlier program, and that's where they found a spear point tip in a rib at Squim in the Manus site. This is about Victoria. Well, let me back up. We've also had a talk by Randall Schalk and others about a bison kill site, and looks like it was butchered on Orcas Island. It's Ayers Pond. So we've had that talk about this kind of a megafauna. This bison antiquus, which is half again as big as your American bison, American buffalo. So this spring we'll have Morley Eldridge speaking from Victoria, where they've found bison and sloth from Vancouver Island not too long ago. And see the cut marks that it'll be showing you that are stone cut marks on these bison bones. They also find sloth. These two, plus mammoths and mastodons, would be common in our area in uh, in the Pleistocene. One of these was found at SeaTac, and that skeleton is on display at the UW Burke. But they're finding these large, gigantic sloths up on Vancouver Island. So Morley will be talking about that April 16th, 2026. Um, uh, oh, let me see what's going on here. I do want to report we've been very successful helping Rick Canute, who's been speaking. He faced great destruction from a typhoon that destroyed about 60 feet of his frozen site with all these wood and fiber artifacts. Um, we raised through membership, through GoFundMe. In fact, today I just sent them a check for $13,500. excuse me, $13,750. And this will allow them next summer, after the thaw, to, as he predicts, to recover over 5,000 wood and fiber artifacts distributed after the typhoon for 4 miles along his beach. Um, so he's very thankful for that kind of funds. That'll support their volunteers that can do this work. Uh, and our members came through very, very well for Rick. Thank you, Pat. Uh, and now the Squaxa Museum exhibit we've been working on is really testing our Chehalis River hypothesis. And we're going to do some survey to see if we can find more examples of first people coming in up the Chehalis. This is basically the coastal movement that is being accepted more and more. And it's clear chitons were a part of their diet, you know, a survival along the refugiums in the glaciated coast. And the first place they could come into our open continent here, the whole Americas, is the Chehalis drainage. And then they would have found interesting the Black Lake Spillway coming in. Um, the Squaxans have this as the storyline. They're very curious the fact that they might be the very first people, humans, on the continent. To them, they've always been here. They were created here. But our science story does not, they're very interested in this science story of people coming in to their territory first in the open continent. And in fact, they were created here because there's no other humans to affect their cultural development. Uh, we'll have a number of mammoth teeth in this exhibit, this mammoth bones. These teeth, through a 1% grant, is dated to 15,000 years ago, and certainly people were here. And these were found up by Cowlitz River above Kelso. These leg bones were dated to 13,800, I'm sorry, 18,300 years ago. So probably could be in glacial maximum and maybe before people. Um, they're very interested in how the Mima Mounds might be part of this story. As you came up the Black Lake Spillway, you would have encountered the Mima Mounds. Anybody spending much any time in the Mima Mounds? Probably Jamie's been there, maybe others, maybe even Dale. Uh, but it's thought that you could ambush mammoths. The Squaxin hunters are quite involved in this project and just kind of trying to imagine what they would do if they encountered a mammoth of this scale. And they go in single file, and so do bison antiquus, and sloths would probably go along between here. And you could set up people with atolls on either side of these kinds of trails. And these are 6 feet tall. So you could throw that atoll from the sides, from each side, and there was a good chance the mammoth won't see you. The problem with an atoll, you have to stand up and throw it, and you don't want a mammoth to see you do that, but you need an atoll to penetrate. So they probably could see an older one or a younger one and ambush it in this kind of area. So this is generally how the Squaxa Museum will be set up. I don't know how many of you have been to the Squaxa Museum. I know Dale has, probably some others, and Jamie maybe. Um, but if you come into the front door, you're going to see this full-size mammoth here in the back wall. And and then on the sides, you'll have keyboards where you can get the story of the Chehalis River and the Kelp Highway. And the atolls will be shown. There's actually two guys here throwing atolls. You can't see it on this screen, on this side wall. And then in these cases will be the bones. The atolls will be displayed on this wall, and in the cases we might have the Skagit Adelaide and the Black Lake biface that we're replicating. Um, and it's mostly set up for young people so they can see what the tundra environment was like that they would face when they first came into the area. These are actually AI tundra plants with glaciers over here. You can see the glaciers here, but these are all what would have been here 15,000 years ago. You'll have a sensor as you walk down towards this full-size mammoth that'll have an elephant roar, a big elephant roar. The kids are going to be, it's this kind of oriented so the kids can really see what it was like, what their very first ancestors might have faced, what the environment was like. And um, and then our dream is this will travel to other tribal museums. So you would likely see it at Tulalip and Suquamish and Makah Museum, and Puyallup's building a state-of-the-art museum. Um, let me, let's go. So we hope you can join us in May once these campgrounds open up to help us do some survey work. What we're seeing is this Black Lake Spillway would have interest people coming up the Chehalis, below the glacial front for the first time in generations. Huge spillway here coming out of Lake Russell. This is how it would have looked. I think Pat would verify it was 140 feet higher than it is today, but it was fresh water versus what it looks like today. And a huge spillway because this is the drainage is off the Cascades and Olympics, plus a lot of water comes down under glaciers. So this would have drained all the way from Alaska, maybe down and into this area, which comes right into Squax and traditional territory. And the Chehalis are involved with it too. Um, so in this area down here, is where we'd like to do survey where the Mima mounds are, quite numerous here, and then the drainages like Wattle Creek here come off the Capitol State Forest. This is all public lands, and they have beautiful campsites. So we'll arrange weekends where you can come, set up, bring your RV if you want. There's no hookups, but or tents, beautiful picnic tables and metal grills here. Nice outhouse facilities. And we'll use those lidar maps I was telling Pat about to really pinpoint where we want to do some walking surveys. And Dave Munsell couldn't be here tonight, but he's quite keen. He's done 300 or 400 surveys in his career of using these FDRs. FDRs are forest duff uh, removal, as he calls it, forest duff removal. So every 10 meters, you use this rake to pull off all the debris on the surface of the forest to get down to the original surface. Um, I have to show you one, I like to have good examples. This is one of the rakes that we'll use. We might ask you to bring one, and you basically can, with these rakes, get through down to the original surface. And if you do it in a systematically as we go through a certain area every 10 meters, we very likely will uncover some living floors or some indication of people from really pinpointing where we should survey on the drainage into these Mima Mound areas. Um, so we're going to try to do some field work, and there's some beautiful areas. This is Wattle Creek, like I said, that isn't far. There's 24 campgrounds. It's free. We'll just say, let's meet and bring your food if you want to stay a couple nights. You need a Discover Pass because it's state parks. So we'll get as many people as we can in enough number of weekends and maybe do this over the next several seasons. Any questions about that or comments? I hope we need to get back out. One thing I should point out is we will be doing in this exhibit, we'll be doing, like I said, Adalel making workshops, stone tool making workshops. In the story pit right next to here, we'll have speakers, and we'll probably show videos of our some of our past Panois talking about the Chehalis River hypothesis. So a lot you can get involved to, plus volunteering to help them with tours or helping them with uh, helping the Squaxans with their exhibits. I'm on the museum board, and the community, Squaxin community, is really engaged. The hunters like this idea. Everybody likes the story that they might be the descendants of the very first people on this continent. People, when they settle in, they seem to hold a territory. It's pretty hard to move them out, or just if you have this, you're working with the same kinds of technologies. This is the Black Lake biface that was found over by Black Lake. Unfortunately, we don't have a date, and unfortunately, the original was sold, as I understand it, for $35,000 to collectors back east. So we don't have the original, but we have a lot of photographs. And so with SPSCC's 3D printing program, we're making a replica of it. This is how big it is. This is no small projectile point. And then 3D printing, you can see some of the flaking on that. We're going to meet with him the 25th. And Dan Miot is actually replicating one, but this is a huge biface. We don't know the date. It was found in that area. The other thing that's common in the Puget Sound, including over in eastern Washington at the East Wenatchee site, are Clovis points, which definitely were used to hunt mammoths, really more like 13,000 years ago, even though we think people were here earlier. This is where the Black Lake biface is found. These are all Clovis points that are definitely connected to mammoth hunting across the country. But there's so many in Puget Sound, and some of the evidence we're finding that there's a number of people suggesting Clovis points were developed in Puget Sound and moved east throughout the country, picked up by other mammoth hunters. And if you've heard of the East Wenatchee Clovis site, which probably isn't too far from Brian, where Brian lives in Yakima, just north of it, there's some pretty amazing Clovis finds in our area. Okay, we better get to the chitons. Any comments or questions about what we're planning? I hope you can get involved with a lot of it. Okay, well, let's talk about the chitin research that's been done. Again, the first paper was on the north and central coast, including Ozette and Hoko Rock Shelter. Uh, and this recent paper, we expand that archaeologically to the Oregon coast. I'm going to break this down like cultural anthropologists can do, or particularly in the earlier times, it was Marvin Harris. It's to look at uh, chitons in terms of the infrastructure. What's the food value? How are they consumed? The ethnozoology, what do we find in the archaeology and in terms of site use of chitons? Structurally, we'll see how they value it in cultural ideology. And they actually name people chitin, royal people. And so when you start to give it that importance, if your royal people are named chitin, that's important. Superstructurally, we'll look at the religion, the philosophy, and how Chitons fit into creation stories. And creation stories are pretty important to all cultures across the world. We have very unique and specific and treasured creation stories. At least you look at the Christian one, humans were eventually created. And there's a story that's the Lord in Genesis and God. One kind of creates it all in a quick fashion. God kind of does a 7 day creation, uh, creates man on about the seventh day and sees that it's okay. He doesn't say it's good. Everything else was good, but they wasn't so sure about man. And man now did not. Women had not been created. How did women get created in the Christian creation story? And these are, pretty well known throughout the Christian world. Any idea how woman was created? Turn on, take off your mute. Any idea? I'm sure Dale.
Reportedly from Adam's rib, which of course was
Adam's rib. Yeah,
yes,
that's something we really
purportedly. Of
do
course,
know. Yeah,
this is a
yeah.
patriarchal myth.
But there's a little
Sorry
more to
for
the story.
interjecting my comment.
The man made it clear he wanted some kind of a companion. Okay, well, God said, okay, I'm gonna parade all the animals. I don't know why just animals, but every animal past you to see if you can pick a companion. And so every animal walked by Adam, and he was told he has to name them. So this is kind of a Linnaeus story of classification. So he named every animal, and they all went by him. And then at the end, he told God, "Nah, I don't think that's what I'm looking for. I really don't see any of those as my companion." And that's where the rib comes in. Uh, and that's what it appears to have been a rib. It could have been other bones, but the rib was taken from Adam, and then women was created to serve man. And then you go into other stories about them sinning and you know, eating of the forbidden fruit when the serpent says it's okay, go ahead. and then and then man is destined to be laboring to the sweat of his brow to become an agriculturalist. He was going to, work night and day on the farm, and the woman was punished for by having to give by the pain she would have giving birth. Well, these are important stories, and chitin fits right into that, and that's superstructural for sure. That's your philosophy and so forth. So, infrastructure, what is a chitin? They're very numerous. Brian said he's tried the furry mantled ones. But there's over 900 living species, 430 fossils. They've been around for 400 million years. They've survived the mass killings, like the one about 260 million years ago, which did end the trilobites that were here for quite some time. And they survived the uh, the asteroids strike that did in most all the dinosaurs except for birds. Um, Probably because they're a bit insulated. They probably could survive some of these because they're in the ocean water right on the intertidal and somewhat able to make it. Some of them make it through these mass killings that would have been, some pretty serious uh, damaging environmental impact. It's not unlike mammals. They survived because there were some of them were they were definitely here with them dinosaurs, but some of them were kind of insulated because they were like moles that lived underground, and they made it. And they shrew-like, well, not shrew, but they're moles. And so thank a mole. You might not like them in your yard, but it's probably why mammals survive to be able to come out and proliferate and take all the ecological niches. But these are fairly insulated too. They basically eat algae. Their mouth. They're full of teeth, pretty raspy teeth. Some are carnivorous. They'll go after shrimp or small fish. Uh, and they're usually intertidal, but some are found thousands of feet down. I think it says 6,000 meters down underwater as well. And the largest is the cryptochiton, uh, which is edible. Uh, and these will actually live to about 40 years. And of these, I found very quickly that the one they really liked was the black katy in this area. And so this one here is really the one that most tribes around here today really go after. Um, and I found that the hard way because me and a friend knew that the elders out in Nia Bay when we were working on Ozette wanted chitons. So we did like Brian. We got these furry ones and filled a bucket of them and took them to the elders, and they very politely, this is Isabellitis, got her bucket of chitons he was asking for, and thanked us. But then it became clear we blew it because the whole community heard that we had gotten the wrong kind of chitin for Isabel, a whole bucket of it, and she had to go out and dump them back into the ocean. So we realized that this is what they wanted. These are different than cryptokitens. They typically only live about 3 years. They might make five, but in 2 years they're able to have they're reproductively active. They're only about 3 inches long. They have all these plates, and you have a nose plate and a posterior plate. And in an archaeological site, you use these to figure out what's the minimum number of individuals you have that are chitin. So if you have 100 of these nose plates and 200 of these tail plates, minimum number of individuals are going to be 200 because that's the largest number. You only have one tail plate. Um, and they do real well in the high energy surf along rocky ranges. The black katy is not sensitive to light, so you'll see them out and about. Um, um, and whereas other kinds will try to avoid being in the low tide light. Like I say, only 3 years. Well, that means they're fast recruiters. So if you clear out a whole area, and within 2 years, they're edible. So you'd have a whole uh, new crop after 2 years. So it's a real quick turnover, which would be very important to keep yourself having these very nutritious shellfish. Um, you basically they're eating algae. You have to be quick to get them off up at the nose to pry them off. You have to pry them off one at a time. If you don't do it right away, they will grip so hard you're not going to get them off. It's best just to leave them. Uh, but if you pop them off from the nose, uh, you then have a nice harvested mollusk there. So what's the food value? And the live meat weight is really, these are about, after you remove the plates, it's calculated at about 2 ounces is one individual. in research at the Ozette Project in Washington, they developed this kind of data, and in comparison, a 12 centimeter long California mussel weighs about the same 2 ounces, 59 grams. So they're equivalent, but a single chitin will provide you about 42 calories. So this is about 200 calories, this plate I've made of boiled chitins. And in the nutrients in native foods of southeastern Alaska, Helen Drury described the value this way. It's a good source of vitamin A. It's good for your eyesight. Uh, 100 grams or two chitins contains about a quarter of the recommended daily allowance for ruba, flavin, and niacin, and about and a number of other things. It's very well liked, she says, by native peoples. It's not something the West eats very much. Um, you can find restaurants that serve chitins in Mexico and Taiwan and a number of other places. And they, again, like the rugged coastline. Uh, Northern Coast archaeological significance. This is where they live. They like this right off the edge. There'll be lots of mussels up here, but this is out at Hoko. These areas like this, you'll see them all over the rock. Uh, and I have specific areas I like to collect them. Um, and they we found 19 sites that were examined down here in the Straits and Puget Sound, and two on the outer coast had a very high percentage of chitins. And these are you're familiar with Ozette Village, and we have the Hoka Rock Shelter. Um, and Basically, it was found at Ozette that 26% of the meat weight was provided by chitins. The largest percentage of meat weight by shellfish at Ozette was chitins, followed by California mussels that had 24%. Um, and this was over 10 years of digging the house floor. Brian walked in the museum. Some of you have seen the house, but it took us 10 years to dig that floor. And from 10 years, the meat weight estimated from that excavation was essentially 4.5 tons of shellfish, total 4.5 tons. And so you got over 1 million grams or 1 ton each of chitins represented and mussels at Ozette. Um, California mussels can be easily collected in patches. You can take off large patches with your shovel or your digging stick. But a chitin, it's one at a time. You have to flip them off. So these high percentages of meat weight of chitin means these were taken off one at a time. Um, and so it really shows you that it was a big percentage of the shellfish diet. Now, shellfish may not provide more than about 5% of your diet, but they wanted that 5% in their diet from all the sites we've looked at. Um, the ethnographic importance of chitin in terms of collecting. This is again Hoko. Some of you have been here collecting, but this is mussel. So you have a ton of California mussel, and you have to kind of go off the edge here at lower tide to get to the chitins here that are in the algae. But David Miller, who is our researcher at Hoka Rock Shelter, says all groups of the North and Central Coast value these chitins, and many of them consider them a great delicacy. And they are tasty. If you eat them raw, they're like abalone. You can suck out the red gonads after you take the foot off, and it's a delicacy. Um, some believe that it's best in the spring when they're softer as the ocean warms up, and by July they start to get tough. It usually involves collection with a knife or a stick. The Kwakwaka'wakw use a hemlock branch for procuring and flipping off chitin one at a time uh, and putting them in baskets. There's never any recording of drying a chitin like you see, say, butter clams or horse clams uh, or salmon or anything. You don't smoke chitins, you don't sun dry them. They don't seem to be kept for later use. Uh, Three ways to consume them. Like I say, there's several recipes. Raw is pretty tasty. You know, you're eating the foot and you chew it like gum. So you take your knife and you cut it around. These are gills along here, but around that and past the mouth here. Here's two on the inside of the foot, and you chew them just like gum. Steaming is the way they're cooked here. You just steam them for a while, and the black skin will come off the plates, and then you can dig out the internal organs, and uh, and then just it's kind of tough, but if you don't cook them too long, they're pretty soft. A good way is roasting them in a fire. You just take the chitin and you put it in the coals, and it roasts pretty quick. Uh, and then you can clean off the black skin and the internal organs and the plates. And actually, that gives us the best taste, I think. I prefer that. This is some I've roasted. Um, and it's just different ways to cook them, giving you different choices for how you want to consume them and how they taste. And this is one of my field trips of students, and they're wondering how do I split a chitin foot up for all nine of us to chew on. Um, but it's uh, like I said, very nutritious. And also, as Brian said, you can pound them with rocks and sticks, a whole chitin to get the plates off and the internal organs, and then eat the raw chitin. It has a medicinal value as a relaxant. I don't know if Brian experienced that or Dale when he was with us, but it not a psychedelic, but the foot raw chewing it definitely has a relaxant character, and it doesn't you don't hallucinate. But too many of them can make you too relaxed or dizziness, and you got to lay down for a while. I don't know why the West hasn't figured this out as something to make into their drugs, but I learned this by again collecting chitins for the elders in Nia Bay, Macaws. Me and two macaw friends went down a steep slope out at, if you've been out, Shy Beach. Before you get there, some rocky areas, and we'd fill a bucket. And we'd be chewing them as we go. We'd chewed a whole bunch of them. And we realized we weren't going back up that hill into my Jeep to get out of there. We were just too tired, dizzy. So we all just laid down on the beach, enjoyed it, and just laying there for a while. And pretty soon we came out of it enough to go drive home and give the bucket to the macaws. The macaw elders I've interviewed refer this to as having good dreams, like Isabellitis. It's quite clear to them that this can really be a nice experience. The Nachana, which are north of Macaw, the Manhasets, had a women's feast. In the spring, they'd soak and pound the chitins and eat them raw while enjoying each other's company and gossip. Gossip's a big art for native peoples. I've worked with macaw Basque weavers, and that's all you do is gossip in there and find out what the council did wrong and everything else. Um, Men could come around as and the circle women, and they and if the women wanted to, they could pass one or two back to the men, but it was more of a women's feast. Anyway, in discussing how abundant these were, David Miller had a nice observation. Chitons seem to have the greatest variety of ways of being prepared for eating. Each of these ways affects different and unique tastes and or textures of the food. A great preference for this species may have resulted if individuals preferred a particular type of culinary experience. You could choose what you wanted and the taste of preparing them. Uh, and this doesn't seem unlike what he considered the current use of potatoes. That's why I put a potato here. Uh, as a common food supplement in the West. We have a great variety of means of preparation of potatoes, so you have different flavors, whether you boil or fry or what have you. Here's the insides of a chitin, and these gonads, once you take the foot off, you could suck that out, and it is real tasty. And then some of the other parts, uh, so there was a lot to the chitin, even if you just chewed the foot and had some of the insides. Okay, let's go to structural. How was the ideology and the naming going? Certainly, if you consider it in terms of social status, there's high-ranking royal people, and they could be named after chitons. So you give a lot of importance to chitons if you're naming your high-ranking royal people chitons. On the central northwest coast, France Boas discussed the high-ranking Kwakwaka'wakw woman, who he called Head Princess V7, and her ceremonial activities, pointing out now she also changed her name, and she used her winter dance name, which she used among her community. Now she told her winter dance name to the chiefs. It was Chiton V7. She said, "That is my name, which I obtained from my father." So uh, Chiton is a very important animal. On the northern coast, it accounts of the other most eaten chiton, the big red cryptochiton. Wilson points out that the head of Skidegate on Haida, whose Skidegate the town was named after, received his name from this chiton, the cryptochiton. So if it's that important, um, that tells you something about how they rank the animal. Okay, let's go to superstructural, the religious philosophy and creation stories. And I got to warn you, there's a lot of adult language here, so uh, anybody under 16 has to leave right now. But I think we don't have any. Black kitty chitons were discussed in female gender references on the Central Coast. Swan Nuchanat Manhasset indicated young men were not supposed to eat the mouth region of black katy chitons, which was apparently taken to be the animal's vagina. Although Mr. Swan found that rather hard to believe, as all the black chitons that he had ever seen were endowed with one of these mouths. On the north coast, the Haida creation stories give chitin a very important role in the creation of humans, especially females, as discussed by Madonna Moss. This is the research I accumulated in the first paper. After the flood, Raven dug a clam from roast pit and released Haida from within the shell. Uh, there's often stories about Raven, not unlike man in the Christian story, wanting company. And he's crying. He asks the creator for some company, and the tears land on these shells on the beach, and humans start coming out. These new humans, though, were all men. There were no women in the creation of and it's not unlike Christian too, where their first human was a man and no women, and that had to be worked out. Um, and to make women in this early story, new humans, Raven attached sticky chitons to the genitals of some and transformed them into women. Himes has presented a slightly different version of the story obtained from Bill Reed, who did this sculpture. Some of you probably seen this at the Museum of Anthro up in UBC, Vancouver. Uh, when Raven finds that the emergent humans are all men, he induces a sexual experience between these creatures and chitons, and subsequently, the chitons give birth to the first human, women and men, so the creation of humans from chitons. In other words, particularly female. And George MacDonald says it doesn't take a structuralist to see the male aspects of a clam siphon and the female nature of chitons. Interestingly, down in the deep south, Puget Sound, the group I work with, Squaxin Island Tribe, have similar creation stories. A lot of you have probably been to the Little Creek Casino. I think I've seen Jamie and Tyler there a lot. Uh, she's still muted though. But the sculpture you see right outside the hotel has a raven on the top, uh, looking quite interested at this clam. And if you look at it, you start to see humans coming out of the clamshell. So humans in the Squaxin uh, creation story were also created by Raven finding humans coming out of a clamshell. You also have the trickster coyote in this nice sculpture and women collecting clams. And if you see, you're at the sculpture, water squirting up like clams are in this beach. So if you're at Squawks and go take, the next time at the casino, go take a look at this beautiful sculpture. And then I found this small book for the second paper I did. It's called Entering Time, uh, and it's the Fungus Man Platters of Charles Edenshaw by Colin Brown. Uh, and he certainly uses chitons and stories of human creation. And these are basically on three argillite platters that Charles Edenshaw, the master Haida carver, um, did this one in around 1885. This is one of the platters, which I think is in Dublin, Ireland. And it illustrates how chitin provides the means for human perpetuation through raven capturing the first female sexual reproductive organ, the swa, in Haida. One of these amazing platters was provided to us to use the image from Seattle Art Museum, and it's another example of chitin's utmost supernatural position in the creation of humans. Um, Here's that platter that's in Seattle Art Museum, and there's Charles Edenshaw carving argillite. A beautiful material that's real common on Haida Gwaii. But Raven is depicted with a spear, and he's hunting swa, but a combination of chitin and female genitalia. The steersman is the one that really came through for Raven is Fungus Man. Fungus Man is on the rear, and he uh, is freaked out or stimulated as they confront the power of Swa, depicted as a spirit-like power under the canoe. So this is chitin, basically, under the canoe. Uh, and they go to this small rocky island of Swa Gwa Ya, literally Vagina Island in Haida Gwaii. With Fungus Man, Raven succeeds in spearing two swaths and brings them back to Eagle Woman and Raven Woman on the shore. Another sculpture by Charles Edenshaw is a sculpture, uh, and uh, again, the creation of humans being from a clamshell. So this is Raven, and it's on the lid of an argillite box. Charles Edenshaw shows Raven on top of a slightly open cockle shell with some emerging faces of humans, and he's holding a dead baby in his arms. So human mortality is also created. You don't live forever, so he's showing the creation of humans, which are exclusively men, but also the perception that humans don't last forever. The second part concerns us there. Many of the Haida story indicate that all the first humans are males. And Raven goes off to seek females since the males are rapidly maturing. They're starting to get older, and with the existence of death, could not perpetuate the human line and or culture. It would end. Humans would never have an impact. In some accounts, women existed sometimes, Raven's sister and wife, but only had pee holes. So Raven set off with a dugout canoe and a different series of bird crew members to hunt swa, female genitalia clinging to swa Guaya, the island, Vagina Island, a small rocky island just south of Newberry Point, uh, in Juan Perez Sound. If they completed their tasks and were successful, humans would exist and begin to wear a human face. I found that island. I had to use Google Map, and here it is on the south end of Haida Gwaii, Squaxa. And if you use Google Maps, you can go in and you'll start to see Newberry Point off Moresby Island on the south end here. And you go even closer, you can actually see it. It's not a very big island. It's mostly rock, you can see, but that is where um, uh, it is Vagina Island where female reproductive organs were produced for perpetuating humans. So maybe we have to do a field trip up and see this island up there. And uh, these are the three platters that Charles Edenshaw made. Uh, and First of all, he took bird companions, but they couldn't stand the power of Swagogwe, and they had to turn back. Finally, he got Fungus Man, and these are the different depictions of Fungus Man on these platters. Uh, and he stuffed them into the back of the stern of the canoe so he couldn't get out. Uh, so he wouldn't, they say, fall out, but if he freaked out enough, he might have left the canoe. Uh, he quickly got two swaths from the island, one large and one small, returned to Eagle Woman and Raven Woman, waiting on shore. One of them grabbed the larger one, and the other is left with the smaller one. Raven consoles her, "Don't worry, yours will always stay small and and safe." So these are chitons under the canoe in each platter, kind of spirit-looking things, but uh, and this one's in Chicago, this one's in Dublin, Ireland. So another depiction is by Charles Newcomb. He asked Harry, a relative of Charles, Harry Edenshaw, that Raven made a woman of rock chitin, speared the genitalia which grew on rocks, threw them at the men. When caught on the men's organ, immediately they grew up. When the men got ashamed and ran into the houses. Um, Alan Hoover believes the monster-like figures under the canoe is the rock chitin vulva that Raven is hunting. It is considered the spirit Swa Sagwangon, dedicated to perpetuation of humans, though Swa, the spirit, chitin vulva, the power of female sexuality was enabled. Truly, chitins becomes the transformation of the few existing humans into women. So humans could perpetuate and develop their culture in the world so that in these stories, beautifully depicted by Eanshaw platters, reflect chitin as integral for our human being. Brown points out a nation will be created, houses will multiply, names and lineages will, and laws will be promulgated, ceremonies will begin, uh, and uh, and the voices of little ones will ring out on the beach, so kids will be produced. Looking at let's quickly look at the Oregon coast. In these sites, three sites were cored, taking smaller samples, columns, and 31% of the shellfish meat weight was chitins. In this one, 34 down here in Rocky Creek, 42. And these sites were excavated a little more in larger size samples. And Cape Arago down in by Coos Bay, 57% meat weight, 42 down in the three of these Port Orford sites, 40, 42, 51, and an average of 41.5. So similar high percentages. So I figured we'd find chitin stories down in the Oregon coast. And I searched through the references of Chinookan oral literature that Franz Boas, Melvin Jacobs, and Vern Ray collected. These anthropologists very early. Nothing in the oral history. And then I reached out to native contacts like the Coquille, the Silettes, and the Grand Ronde tribes members I know. Nothing materialized on chitin stories. So I checked with regional researchers like Robert Boyd, and he said he didn't have a clue, and he referred me to Douglas Dewar, who did a search of a digital archive, and he found hundreds of references in his works from Alaska and BC, like we just saw, Kokwakawak and Haida, but didn't find a single reference in any of his Oregon materials. So there probably were stories, but nothing like we saw on Haida of a very specific role in creation of humans. When we talk about Chehalis River hypothesis, people moving down the Kelp Highway, uh, a lot of the researchers recognize that marine people use the abundant chitins on the rocky shore of the kelp beds. Chitins would be a major source of nutrients and part of the original maritime diets. Um, so this incipient importance may be reflected by Haida up here in their origin stories, that they first peoples coming in the area subsisted on something that was pretty important to them, the chitins, and it's used to name royal people and so forth. So this might be reflected in that sense. The earliest wet site that's on the coast is Haida, Kilgigway right here on the south end, and it has excellent preservation of wood and fiber, as well as vertebra and invertebra, and exhibits a strong dominance of mussels. Uh, Black Katy chitin plates occur at that early site in most of the samples, though very low percentages. I helped him in 2012. This is me with my classic Squaxa toque or hat. helping the director Daryl Fedge and Gualaka Hart's great great grandfather's George is Charles Edenshaw, trying to find more artifacts from this very early time period. You can see mussels are well preserved in this 10,700-year-old site, as well as flaked argillite. This is again Haida Gwaii, and that those platters are made out of this softer argillite stone, and it's heavily used for stone tools 10,700 years ago. So, anyway, in the rest of the coast, they're usually at about 1,000 years ago and later. So the 7 sites tested along the Oregon coast are all within the last 1,000 years. and Ozette and Hokorokshot are about the last 1,000 years as well. So nothing as early as up here at Haida Kilgigway. So let's summarize. This abundance is certainly of nutritious and subsistence importance. The coastal archaeologist resource importance and value has often been overlooked, whereas salmon and bivalve shellfish, clams, have been described in the anthropological and archaeological literature in exhaustive detail. We get a lot of it. Researcher Greg Monks, and others have pointed out that Northwest Coast anthropologists usually suffer from salmonopia. And I would add possibly bivalve clamopia. This is what we look at. Considering salmonopia, one needs to be pointed out that really halibut are the #1 fisheries at the Macaw territory and the Haida in the North Coast. We have shown here that black kitty chiton deserves more attention as a shellfish to resist bivalve clamopia. Possibly both of these opia derived from the Western's ranking of these resources uh, are not very high in their own culinary diets. Very few of us eat um, uh, univalves and chitons, shell fisheries. So again, structurally, that's very important for your nutritional intake. Several resulting tastes by cooking them in different ways, including raw as a medicinal relaxant, uh, and for community or female gatherings. Structurally, high-ranking central northern people were named chiton, reflecting the baseline cultural importance. And super structurally famed Haida artist Charles Edenshaw spent considerable time and effort to create 3 argillite platters, sculptures depicting both the initial creation of humans, exclusively all male, um, and later the dangerous efforts of raven and fungus man to obtain female reproductive organs and chitons on Vagina Island to create human females so humans could perpetuate and create their cultural worlds. Nothing more is more supernatural, structural, important to the cultures than the accounts of human creation. That goes for Christianity too. It's important basics. Um, So I believe this amply shows archaeological and ethnographic evidence to show that chitons were particularly valued at all levels, the infrastructural, structural, and superstructural cultural levels by people in the north, central, and now the southern northwest coast of North America. Chitons are certainly acknowledged at any of these cultural levels, are not acknowledged at any of these cultural levels in our outside Western scientific perspective. Through chiton research, I believe it's time for this Western void may be key to recognizing chitons in the Northwest Coast archaeological studies. Time to scientifically lift the binders and chew the chitons. So thank you very much. Let me in this and ask if you have any questions. Thanks, Jamie. Any questions from anybody?
I have a question, Dale.
Sure, Jamie.
So I'm curious, I didn't catch how long so the things that show up in the archaeological records are the plates, right? And then how long do they last in the record? Because some different materials last different time periods. I didn't catch
Yeah.
how long they might last.
Yeah, the that's a good question. The reason we see them in the midden, and that's why I was so curious to see if there were some in the Kilgigway that's 10,700 years old, is because it's a waterlogged site. It's a wet site. And chitin plates are kind of like uh, fingernails, so to speak, but it's not real strong. Um, and So you might not just see them in most shellmans that are very old. So maybe the 1,000 years that we do see them in shellmans is a factor of preservation. And now that we see them in wet sites, we only have one 10,700-year-old wet site, but they are there with wooden artifacts and beautiful stone tools. So, um, but the fact that we do see them and the fact that they probably were a big item to assure your survival as you move down the glaciated coast, if everything else failed, if you weren't getting fish or sea mammals. Um, there were certainly refugiums along the coast, and you could get land mammals too. One of the biggest megafaunus finds in the Western Washington is Lake Quinault. Lake Quinault has 18,000-year-old plus, or even later, mammoths in particular in a site that's just south of Lake Quinault. Well, that's during the glacial period, that probably was the case. You would go up the Quinault River, you would find bison and mammoth and short-faced bear and dire wolves and American lions, other predators. And for those people to get into the open continent, they would have to go south. Um, and so would the animals probably, and you would end up still on the Chehalis River to get into the open continent because you could not go over the Olympic glaciers. We did visit the 75 megafauna bones from Lake Quinault, Blue Bank, and we'll probably get a mastodon tooth, a dire wolf skull. I don't think we're getting a short-faced bear, but to put in the Squaxin exhibit. So we did visit that big collection with the Quinaults knowing we were doing that. Um, so it just probably from the beginning was an important shellfish. If everything else was failing, you could get those calories, 40, 50 calories per chitin, um, to make sure you survive as you're moving along the glaciated coast, trying to find new territories and resources, and probably for generations. But thanks. Does that answer it?
Yeah, yeah. I guess I was also curious how it might compare to how long salmon bones might last, for example. You think
Yeah.
they last longer than salmon bones or less?
Salmon bones, particularly vertebrate, do pretty well, but the ribs don't, or even the head bones. Um, so you have the same kind of a problem there, probably. There's
Yeah.
some parts of the animal preserved. I think these plates are different than, say, gooseneck barnacles, which have plates on really their feet area of the gooseneck barnacles, but they probably don't survive. You know, middens are slowly degrading as through time, and pretty soon you end up with just a black layer. But these are pretty hardy little plates, and they seem to, be very visible, easy to count, easy to see if there are minimum number of individuals. And so it's something that's there and invisible, but it's not really given the credit it deserves. Again, shellfish in general weren't a big part of anybody's diet. It's probably 5 to 6, 7% of your diet, but they wanted that 5, 6, 7 because of certain nutrients and a desire. You had a desire to eat that amount, it looks like. And the archaeological sites, that's about what you see. And if you compare it to shellfish, to fish, to birds, uh, to mammals, it's about 5%. And birds are even smaller percentage, but they might have been after the materials from birds, like the down and the bones. Though that's about 2% of the middens. Um, and so we can't, we don't want to build it up as the only thing you have there, but it's something that was desired and had a wide range of ways to prepare.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and the medicinal value of chewing raw chitons isn't well recognized. And maybe we're letting the cat out of the bag here, and we'll get the pharmacist in there trying to figure it out. Uh, but it is recognized by the tribe. But they don't, and maybe, they don't make a big thing of it because they don't probably want people to get too excited about it. That's why they say it gives you good dreams, and we know it's a relaxant. I'll go over pretty frequently. I'm not an addict, but I'll go over to the other side where the rocky beaches at Hoko, and I'll eat 3 or 4 or 5 of them and feel really good, but not overdo it. Like when I was younger. Now, Matt Johnson, when he comes for Macaw Days, we invite everybody to Macaw Days to camp at Hoko. Um, but Matt might be real interested in trying them out now. Have you tried them, Matt?
No, I had to leave before you got a chance to make them last time. I think when I was at the campground, you were going to make some, but I had to get back to Ellensburg then. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. So how's your research going?
Good. I'm just putting together a data set and doing the classwork for before I get to, writing a proposal. So haven't gotten too far yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just persistence. You'll get there, and you have good people in Victoria.
Yeah, yeah. There's a guy that I share an office with who's doing a shell midden site, and there's all kinds of chitin plates and things in his midden that he's looking at. So it's
Uh-huh.
in the Broken Island group up on
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
right
they've
Ian
done a
side.
ton of work at Berkeley Sound.
Yeah.
There's actually a master's thesis I'm reading now on gooseneck barnacles from that area in
Oh yeah.
in the sites. It's Megan F. Ford. She was going to try to come in tonight, but didn't make it. But she's at UBC now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But she was a student of Ian. I
Yeah.
could tell him hi.
Yeah, I will do.
Any other questions? Time is it? We're doing okay. Yeah, I've been taking, like I say, take care of my wife so much lately. A lot of this I had to read. I kind of apologize for that, but it's right out of those 2 papers, and I'll send them out to everybody so you can have the papers. Any other questions? Thank you. How you doing? Good. Yeah, I think we have an exciting year here, and I look forward to Alicia coming down to see the Squaxan exhibit. They're excited, and it's been good to give them a storyline on the Chehalis River hypothesis for them to recognize they may be the very first people to come into the open continent, the descendants. And they actually are getting their hunters together, like I mentioned, to have meetings to see, brainstorm what would they do with a mammoth if they were hunting it. Uh, they hunt bear and deer and elk quite frequently in that area. Not a lot of bear. Bear wasn't hunted really very much in what we see in the central coast here. Well, great. I don't know if we got Matt in here or not. I don't think so. But um, anyway, thanks for being here tonight, and we look forward to Marley Eldridge talking about the giant bison and sloth that they were hunting on Victor in the Victoria area. Anything else, Patrick? I think we lost them. Well, thanks. Thanks, Matt and Dale. It's good to visit with you. Glad you're doing well, Dale. See you real soon then, and I'll keep you informed. And anybody have any questions about the survey work? Would you be interested in coming and camping down here and working on the drainages into the Meeman area? We need to sort of stick with public lands. So we don't have to ask permission of private property owners, but it's really a large area that we can camp in and spend a few days and have fun together.
Yeah, I might be interested in that. I'll have to see how
Yeah,
it
me too,
goes.
Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think those for camping it doesn't even open up till May, but we'll start looking at it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but we can use some to just, the more eyes, the better for looking for things. All
Yeah,
right.
and I don't live far from there, so I wouldn't even have to camp. But you keep me in the loop and I'm happy to participate. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I might camp just for the hell of it, but I live close enough to commute to. So, but we just need to know, and I mean, there's a big, nice campground, and we'll all meet uh, at that campground, and I know Matt plans to come down, Matt Barkley. Okay, well, thanks, and we'll be in touch then. I'll send those papers tomorrow. Anything
Thanks,
else,
Dale.
Brian?
Nope.
Okay,
Hey, thanks a lot. That was great.
thank you. Yeah, I found it. I mean, I've been doing it since 1968, but finding out all this new information about chitons is pretty amazing.
I'm kind of looking forward to trying 3 or 4 of them out and relaxing on the beach.
Yeah, now you know. I imagine any species of chitons could have that effect. It's
Oh,
not
I
just
found the black Katy ones up there too.
have you? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
you have. Yeah, they since they're the preferred one and
yeah.
in today's world, we see every chitin in the archaeological sites. You weren't too fussy if you could find them. But the trouble is they hide from being exposed to the light, so you don't find them.
Mhm.
But black kitties don't do that. They're visible. All right, we'll show your grandkids.
Hey, thanks again.
Okay. Good night. Thank you, everyone.